So it's been a while since I've uploaded anything, and for that I do apologise. In addition to some personal things getting in the way, I've also been spending time writing content for a new podcast I intend to release on iTunes in the next couple of months. My last video was a standalone story that was submitted by a subscriber. I got some positive feedback from it because it was potentially about a skinwalker, so I decided to make this my next video, purely about skinwalkers. Story 1. A year or so ago, I left England for the summer in order to travel a bit and maybe find some work abroad for a few months. I managed to stumble across a decent paying job as a farmhand in a northwestern area of the Navajo Nation reservation in New Mexico. The farmer was looking for somebody to help him with busy work over the summer and allowed me to sleep in what I can only describe as a cabin. Basically, a big shed he had renovated in order to house whoever he had working for him at that moment in time. It was a large farmland, and the shed was situated pretty much parallel to the house across the largest field of crops. Living in this shed with me was a half-Native American boy, who was about the same age as me, named Ahiga. Apologies if I misspelt, it's been a while since I wrote or spoke his name. Anyway, I arrived at the cabin after a long and stressful journey by plane and then pretty much hitchhiking my way across the USA. I met the farmer and the boy, and they both seemed friendly enough. Everything was smooth sailing for around 2 weeks, even with the relentless heat beating down on my pale English skin. Ahiga and I became close as we were around each other 24/7. He would always tell me interesting stories of Navajo legend. He often told me of the Yinaldushi, skinwalkers, in detail, and he seemed very knowledgeable on the subject. He told me how he dreamed of these creatures often. It seemed like he had some kind of morbid obsession with these things. I chalked it up to horror stories and didn't really put any stock into what he was saying, although it did interest me. I've never been one to believe in or fear the supernatural. One evening, after a heavy day of work, I headed back to the cabin to shower and change. I got back to the cabin, showered, got changed, and sat down on my bed. There was no sign of Ahiga yet, which was weird because he would usually be back by now. I waved it off, and left my cabin to head into the nearest town, if you will, just to explore a bit more of the land I was staying in. I explored for a while, and found a nearby bar to drink in as I hadn't had a single drink since moving here. I left the bar around 10:30 p.m, and it was pretty much fully dark. I began to walk back to the farm. As I walked back along the windy road, I felt as if I was being watched. I walked on a bit faster and made my way across to the farm. As I walked around the farmer's house, I noticed what looked like someone carrying a bag under their arm leaving my cabin. Something felt and looked not right about this figure and its movements. I went stealth mode almost instinctively and took the long way round the field, hiding behind the fencing. I managed to get a good angle on the figure. As he stood up, the light shining from the cabin illuminated, and I saw that it was Ahiga. At first, I was relieved, but then I saw how erratically he was moving, almost with no rhythm at all. Under his arm, he clutched a dog's severed head. I felt sick to my stomach and ducked down, but managed to compose myself. I poked my head up to check once more, and he was heading off into the forest. I took this opportunity to dart for the cabin and pull my keys out to unlock the door. As I got close, I tripped and dropped my keys and thundered to the ground. I propelled myself back up and turned to see why I fell, and I saw that I had tripped over the rest of the beheaded dog. I swung around and looked towards the woods and saw Ahiga on all fours. Not like an animal, but like a person with their arms and legs bent in the wrong direction. He stared at me. It felt as if he was looking directly into my soul. He had 2 yellow glowing eyes and a confused look across his crooked face. "I am Ahiga," I think he tried to say, but the words were guttural and frothy, almost like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. I unlocked the door and bolted inside, locking it behind me and closing all the curtains and windows in the cabin. I sat awake all night, hearing noises and feeling watched somehow. I'd hear whatever it was at the door now and again, pretending to be Ahiga. It would repeat parts of the stories Ahiga had been telling me whenever we relaxed in the cabin together on previous nights. And every time it showed up, a horrific smell filled the cabin. It was so disgusting. It made me vomit a few times. In the end, the harassment stopped and daylight began to shine through the curtains. I checked out the window and saw nothing outside. I quickly gathered all of my possessions and got the hell out of there. I flew back to England the next week after using all my farmhand money to rent a hotel room on the East Coast as far away from the place as I could. I often wonder what happened to Ahiga, but I'm also glad I didn't wait to find out. Many of you won't believe this story, but I can assure you it's 100% true, and I still think about it at night to this day. I'm still not sure what I saw, but sometimes I still feel as if I'm being watched. I think it may just be paranoia. There's no stories of these things following you across the pond. Is there? Story 2. The following story is told from the perspective of a female. This just happened to me. I'm a bit freaked and I don't know quite what I saw. I'm hoping I can get some clarity. For context, I live in the Midwest, in a suburban area. My boyfriend also lives in a suburban area about 30 to 60 minutes away from me, depending on if I use either the interstate, highway, or city roads. That being said, I usually take the interstate there, then take the highway partway home, since the highway is only about a mile away or so from his neighborhood, and I take it all the way to the interstate. There is also another road I can take, a paved country road with one lane on each side of the road, with no streetlights. It eventually meets up with a few main streets, which are numbered roads we use where I live, and it will take you back towards the highway and city. I'm sorry for all the background about the roads, but I feel it's important, and I feel like my choice was a definite sign that the butterfly effect is always in works. On to the story. Earlier today, I went to pick up my boyfriend and we basically hung out and binge-watched a TV show I recently got him into, Broadchurch. Around 11 p.m, he says he should probably go home since he works that morning. I agree, and drive him home using the interstate with no problems. We kiss goodbye, and then I am on my way out of the neighborhood and towards the street that takes me to the main roads. If I turn right, it's a straight shot to the highway. If I turn left, I can take it down to the country road for a bit of a late-night drive. I decided to take the latter. I turn left, then turn right at the stoplight and begin to drive through the dark country night. It was nice out, so I had my windows rolled down and my music up, just letting the breeze come in. It was pretty windy, so my car was swerving a little from the wind, and you couldn't see the stars or anything because the clouds were taking over the sky, building up a storm. I thought about switching on my high beams to see better, but the road was really curvy and had a lot of hills, and I was afraid I'd accidentally blind someone coming from the opposite direction. What happened next made me glad I didn't turn them on. On the left was a small patch of woods and overgrowth. To my right were wide open empty fields, and in front of me was a hill. Toward the crest of a hill, I saw something beginning to cross the road. Something large and dark, with what looked like antlers on its head. I thought maybe at first it was a deer or even an elk, and I slowed down. But when I got closer, I realized something was wrong. One of the things that was wrong was that it was moving very slow, like it was hurt or something, and it didn't even glance at me. It just kept moving towards the patch of trees to my left, which I thought seemed weird. I felt like it should have at least acknowledged the sound of my vehicle. The second thing was that this animal that I presumed was a deer or elk, couldn't have been. It was at least the size of a moose, but that couldn't be right because where I'm from, there are no moose. We had deer and maybe some elk, but not moose. I felt a cold wave of dread wash over me as I watched this moose thing make its way across the road. And then it stopped, and it looked right at me, It twisted its head so fast to look at me I almost screamed. Its face was hideous. It looked rotten somehow, like it was withering away, and its eyes were so dark, I was scared it didn't have any eyes. There was blood dripping from where its mouth was, and I could see sharp teeth poking out from its lips as they pulled back into a sneer. I thought about reversing my car and hightailing it out of there, but I was frozen. You know how when adrenaline kicks they say you enter either fight or flight mode? Well, they don't tell you that there's a third option, and that's to freeze, which is exactly what I did. I just stayed in place, hands still on the wheel, foot still digging into the brakes. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at that thing with the thing staring back at me. But when it started towards my car, I honestly thought I was going to die. I couldn't move, couldn't blink, could barely even breathe. All I could do was hope and pray that I wouldn't be killed by some freakish moose-looking monster. And then a pair of lights began to rise over the hill toward us, and as this other vehicle's high beams shone on the thing in the road, it let out this blood-curdling scream that didn't sound entirely human. It was guttural and animalistic and sort of raspy. It's hard to explain. But I watched as this thing got on its hind legs and lurched itself across the road and into the thicket of trees and bushes, narrowly missing the other person. I knew that thing would probably come back out if I stayed where I was. So before I could give it a chance, I slammed on my gas pedal and gunned it out of there, going well over the posted speed limit. I just wanted to get as far away from it as possible. Every dark curve or patch of trees or field made me feel so paranoid that I would see the creature again, and all I wanted to do was go home and never for the life of me drive on that godforsaken country road again. I made it home safe, but shaken. And to cut a long story short, my family thought I was being hysterical and had just seen a deer. But I know what I saw, and that thing wasn't a deer. It couldn't have been. I've read up on skinwalkers, but I'm not sure if that's what I saw. I mean, do they even exist out in the Midwest? I thought it was more in the Arizona-New Mexico area. Why would a skinwalker be here? Why would it come after me? Was it even a skinwalker, or was it something else entirely? Was it my mind just playing tricks on me? What was that thing? Please, if anyone knows what it was or has any idea what it was, please tell me. I'm so scared I'm going to come across that thing again, and I don't know if next time I'll be as lucky. Story 3. Somewhere, around 8 years back, 2 of us were driving in a neighborhood on the edge of a natural land. It was the time of year when things got dark early. I don't recall the exact time, but it was night and the sun was down for a while. There was a little bit of traffic still at stoplights, so it was slow moving. I was in the passenger seat and spotted a pale shape darting around, in and out of a cul-de-sac on the sidewalks. I said something along the lines of, "What the heck was that?" And the driver of the car saw it too when they had to stop for a light. We reasoned it must be a loose dog, but that was not the first impression either of us got. I'm open-minded to strange claims. My friend is generally not. The fact that they said they couldn't tell if it was a dog either stuck with me. While I can entertain the notion of Sasquatches or something, this person is very much a believer in mainstream, common consensus, reality model. This is what we saw. Creature, very pale, almost luminescent. I could not make out any fur, but this was at night. The thing was fast, and I did not get a clear enough look. The size and similar shape of a large dog, somewhere in the area of 100 pounds or more if I had to guess. Emaciated looking, lean, long body, with not much belly and weird long limbs. I don't recall seeing a tail. It was moving on all fours, constantly, rapidly darting in and out of the shadows created by the streetlights. It was a quadruped, but didn't move like I expected a dog would. Big, loping strides and odd movements. For a moment I speculated it was a female deer because of the bounding long legs, but deer have beer-barrel torsos and big ears. I would not expect a starving stray to have the energy to be moving that quickly. but it could have been in a panic. A few times it slowed down enough and was walking forward I could get a better look. It was hard to make out details on the head in the gloom, but something seemed really wrong about it. Not like a dog's head, but more like a tilted flat face with a tapered chin. I realised that is a similar profile to a dog's snout. I don't think it had ears. Very bright, glowing eyes, brighter than I have ever seen on an animal. Those staring white eyes, forward-facing, large. I can see videos and pictures of animals with eyes that glow that bright, but videos are not the same as our eyes. They perceive light differently than what video equipment will capture. I don't remember seeing eyes glow nearly that bright on a dog before in person, and usually dogs look like dogs from the front. The area, suburbs in western Washington state. There is a creek and a small strip of woods behind the cul-de-sac, and multiple trails throughout the neighborhood. There is a large cemetery about a mile away. There are multiple large parks and wilderness areas within walking distance, and interconnected lakes and streams. Usual sewer system, I assume. A bit further out are very large natural areas and forested mountains, well within roaming range for an animal that size. With regards to the aftermath of this event, I felt like this might have been some sort of omen. I can't say if it was related to anything negative that happened in my life. I just felt a little haunted emotionally, just creeped out. I thought about a dog-like creature with a human face as something I could use in my world-building and monster design. I know this is an old memory, and I could not get a closer look, but this experience was so unsettling and unusual that it stayed with me. Coming across sketches and even a possibly fake photo that were very close to my memory prompted me to come back on Reddit and post this. I get things wrong from time to time, but I don't fabricate. Now, this could have been an emaciated white stray dog with unusually glowing eyes and bizarre movements. I freely admit that. It's weird that based on seeing it, I would add a dog-like monster with a human-like face to my menagerie. It's weird that someone with a mainstream worldview agreed that something was off, and we were both creeped out. Normally, I'm not asking what was that thing years later. Considering how many mainstream lies I have uncovered, and other strange experiences I have had personally, I am inclined to believe my senses more than I am told by authorities at this point. How the world works is not a fixed dogma. That night, my senses, my instincts said that this is not a dog, that this thing is wrong and dangerous. Make of this what you will. For what it's worth, from an internet stranger. I swear these things are true to the best of my recollection. This is an old account, and I'm trying to retire from social media. We have all spread misinformation on accident. I'm not going to have possibly my last Reddit post be the first knowing lie I tell on here. My memory is not perfect, but some experiences are seared in there. Be well. Ask your own questions and find your own answers. Any of us could be wrong, including established authorities. I am still haunted by this. Thank you for watching and/or listening to this video. If you enjoyed my storytelling, please go ahead and hit the like button. Please also subscribe to help my channel to grow. It really does help. Thanks again for listening.